great big warm welcome to everybody. So many familiar faces and some new ones too. So welcome everybody. Really glad you're here.
Thank you so much for coming. And I think of the three of you as having such a vibrant, collaborative energy with each other and with the people you work with. Alfonso, can you tell us a little bit about the history of the idea of your organization in Mexico?
There's they called it the war on drugs. It started. It was basically a war on marginalized people, and it's claimed a lot of lives. And so we started working a lot, trying to find ways to respond to violence, state violence, gendered violence. The work we do with communities lately has been very much focused on people that are organizing to defend their land, their territories against things like mining companies.
And how about you, Jay and Ravi?
We were responding a lot to children and families who'd been diagnosed with a developmental disability when we started our work. I think that having those sort of glimpses into what Collectivo was doing has been a huge inspiration for us to kind of step into this work.
I think narrative practices India, like Jay said, began in the context of understanding of disability from being this thing that needed to be corrected to a thing that was an identity. We also started thinking about the intersections of caste that in India is a conversation that is not spoken much. The history of India is that India went through two waves of colonization. One was the colonization from the British, and then within the internal, there's a structure not similar to race, which is so invisible because it's not just based on color. We live in a country still where queer people don't have rights, very basic human rights. And in a country where every 50 kilometers, the language changes.
Narrative Practices India may have been underground for a while, but I think you've just celebrated your first year. And from an outside perspective, you're so prolific. How have you managed to do that?
All six of us come from this perspective about why we are doing what we are doing is an act of resistance. So we have a WhatsApp group which keeps on like buzzing all the time with ideas. And somebody puts an idea and everybody else is sending hearts and hearts and hearts. And you know that, it's something that we need to do, act on.
Many of us old timers, we've talked in the past about, a spark, our first little spark of narrative, like what kind of drew us into this otherworldly way of looking at people, problems, and the therapeutic relationship. And I'm just wondering if you have a spark that you care to share, each one of you. Ravi, were you sparked?
No doubt about it. It was like coming home. I was running a group of children around handwriting training, children who were talking about handwriting difficulties. We did this conversation around Mr. Bad Handwriting. They all got together. Suddenly this group of 10 kids are together discussing and plotting and planning and figuring ways out. Just to see these kids come together against something they wanted to work towards. The buzz of hearts that happens between people when these conversations are happening. That's my sparking moment.
The buzz of hearts that starts to happen when these people come together. That's beautiful. Jay, do you have a spark?
I remember just being very dissatisfied all through my studying, thinking about how this just doesn't fit with that description of who people are, until I was able to sort of read a little bit about narrative. I think driving force for me was actually the coming together of like-minded professionals, because I felt like I felt a lot of resonance with people who were not happy with the traditional ways of working, I think.
I appreciate that. How about you, Alfonso? Did you have an initial spark?
I was studying psychology, and similar to Jay, I was very, very dissatisfied with it. It was actually my mom that came and she said, you should read this book, okay. And I said, what would my mom know about, the ideas I'm interested in? And I let the book sit there like for 6 months, And I think it was out of boredom that I started reading Narrative Means to Therapeutic Ends. And I remember very clearly having this experience. It was almost like going through a portal and there's no way back. And it was exciting and scary at the same time.
I'm just wondering, for those who are listening in and thinking, I have some visions, some ideas of things I want to do in the world, but it just seems too big, too not possible.
I think it's a trap, like to think that things that they have to be big in order for them to be meaningful. So in Spanish, we would always ask ourselves, "Cómo si?" Like how can we go forward? What's the way forward? And that usually it's different from the way we imagine it in the beginning. So that question has been very important for us to think that things are either big or if not, they're not meaningful. That's really that's a victory of power, I think. And I think that hope lies within tiny things. Yeah.
I think people should get their best friends to work with them. Somebody to tell you that it's possible. We can do this. In the cultures that we grew up, we were never taught to do things alone.
That seems to be the theme, isn't it? Get people together that you can trust and envision and co-spark with. Charlie, it kind of reminds me of what I feel so grateful to have you in my life and the other people that we've discovered. Very similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that start small and
right. Very small.
Yeah. So before we move into the small groups, we did say we wanted to ask people a couple of questions to go into the groups. Welcome back. We thought we would just kind of go through the different questions. So the first was really interested in knowing, kind of having heard this conversation, what stood out to you?
Everyone in our group was so struck by Alfonso saying, if we think it has to be big to mean something, that is a victory of power. I think being reminded that we can take small steps and that's meaningful. Every action we take can be an act of resistance, but also an act of creation.
One of the things I shared was the thinking of like flipping it on the head to think like, como si, because oftentimes we can get struck by all the roadblocks in our way to that thing we want to achieve. My work involves a lot of rape, sexual assault, human trafficking. I was thinking I can't do it, or there's too many this or too many that. But if I go, como si, like it was like, like I already have this, maybe I already have that. I'm really passionate about wanting to do this, especially for a lot of the women here who don't have access to being able to afford mental health. A lot of the undocumented women who get assaulted at work and don't feel they have a place to go to, or there's a language barrier. I get a lot of those Spanish speaking referrals. So I've just been thinking about how do I go from not just the private practice work, but to larger community work.
In the conversation, Alfonso and Jay and Ravi all mentioned David, Shona, and Maggie. And all three of you are here as important mentors to all three of them. What's it like for you to hear this conversation?
It's thrilling. It's hard to grasp what these people have done. It's not spoken about very much, except on occasions like this. If you wanted to do a PhD thesis, these people would be, great subjects to study of how do good ideas come about, and how is it that you can put together good people, but they don't always produce good ideas, and sometimes they can produce discord rather than good ideas. So, this is so interesting to me to hear about these groups and how enduring they are. It's, a marvel.
It's hard to sort of appreciate just how much you have done in this amount of time. It just makes me think about what Michael would appreciate about where you've all taken narrative practices, taken those ideas that Shona and I shared from him to you, and from you, David, and very much, I think, very much in line, in tune with the intentions of the narrative practice. And so it's just thrilling for me. Just really thrilling.
I remember the first time, I think it was, Narrative Means got translated into Spanish. I think that was the first translation. And Michael Turney goes, did you ever believe for a moment that anyone would read this book outside, Australia or New Zealand? And I go, absolutely not. I can't. I mean, we were just, baffled beyond belief.
Thank you, Poncho and Ravi and Jay, for being with us and for inviting us into your world. It's just inspiring to hear how you're doing that. And I think the word becoming is relevant. And I consider the context within which you're working to be that.
It's 4:00 in the morning, 4:15 here right now. But I'm not sleepy at all. In fact, more energized to do more things. But just happy to hang out and, be with people who I love and who I look up to, who I've read. What a privilege it is to have this space. So thank you.
I think this is obvious, but I just want to say it, that those of us who are older, to think that the ideas and practices that we cherish are actually living on beyond us, and that have a whole new generation of people who are coming together and shaping new possibilities with it. It's, I don't even know what words to use, but it's just deeply comforting and inspiring. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Cheers, everybody.